Howdy, guys. We're back on Ghosts and Friends. Got another special guest for you this Wednesday afternoon. Welcome to the channel, Mr. Dave Myrick. Dave's a big Sooner guy up there in Norman, does a lot of coverage for him. So, Dave, if you don't mind, tell us a little bit about that coverage and about yourself, brother.
Yeah, Cord, good to be with you. Appreciate you having me on. That was a very official intro you had. I liked it. Kind of got me ready in the groove here. But yeah, I cover Oklahoma athletics for 107.7 The Franchise, where I'm at right now. The flagship station for pretty much every OU sport runs through us, and also do some play-by-play high school football, which we got coming up Friday night on top of the OU game. So a busy week up here, Cord, but a lot of fun, and can't wait to get this thing kicked off.
Absolutely, man. I look forward to catching up and seeing more of your coverage. I know that we've probably only roughly a little over a year kind of, been acquaintances, and we got to know each other a lot more here in the last month or so. And so I know we talked a little off air about, this time of the year being pretty hard. The season's right there. You can almost taste it. But you said you just came from Norman. Talk a little bit about the attitude around campus right now and how geeked up people are to get SEC football season kicked off.
Very geeked. That's a great word, man. There's just that buzz, that feeling around every campus really across the country right now. With kickoff is close. You said it. You can taste it. In Norman, the leaves are starting to change and fall a little bit. Students are back on campus. You can see people gearing up in the stadium and the vendors setting up. It's a very unique feeling, and I think more so this year in Norman than we've seen in a while. I'm not sure if you heard, but Oklahoma and Texas moved to the SEC. But there's a little bit of added excitement around the program, of course, with that coming up. But as I've tried to remind people the last few weeks, don't overlook your first three opponents. We've talked about the SEC schedule and jumping the deep end and LSU and Alabama and all that. That's great. You still got Temple, Houston, Tulane coming to Norman first. So Temple checks off the first box Friday night at 6 o'clock. Another unique thing kicking off on a Friday. If it's been done in OU history, I would have to see it. I don't recall, so this might be something really new, and it's at 6 o'clock on a weeknight, Friday night. So they've had a little bit of difficulty selling this thing out. A lot of people just getting off work. If you got kids, you got to get them to your sitter and then get to the stadium. So they're dealing through that on top of a weather forecast now that's calling for rain and lightning and hail. I mean, dude, go figure. It hadn't rained in Oklahoma in like 3 years, and now Friday night, here we go. So, to answer your question, yeah, just a lot of excitement. You can feel it. Kickoff is in the air, and it's the best time of the year for me, man, and no doubt about it.
Well, obviously, you Longhorns that end up watching this video or watching now, know your opponents, know your enemies. So check out the Sooners Friday night at 6 o'clock. And with all due respect to Temple, man, you guys have some incredible home games coming up. So I can see a scenario in which some Oklahoma fans are like, "Hey, this is a tough game to get to." There's a couple of variables in play, and there's some cool ones down the line. Maybe we save $1 or $2 for. And I wouldn't. I know that there will be some fans that maybe post a picture or two and want to make fun of maybe a 80 or 90% Memorial Field, but I definitely wouldn't be one of those guys. I completely understand why. Luckily down here, man, the last week we've had a lot of overcast, some high 80s temperatures, and so it's really rare for late August in Texas. But it's starting it's kind of not, yours is more permanent up there in Norman, I feel like, but yeah, it's started to feel like fall a little bit early. And with the season right here, I mean, it's that time, and there is obviously a little more buzz and excitement with the SEC schedule on the horizon. But as you said, both of us have business to take care of before we get there, because there's not going to be anything more humiliating than a loss. And now, granted, we do go to Michigan, like that's a tough game, but the jokes are going to fly if we drop one to Michigan, and it's going to be a lot of, you can't handle Michigan, you can't handle the SEC. And, we're just going to have to sit there and take it until we prove otherwise. So up until then, though, man, got to take care of business. That's all that comes down to.
Yeah, man. I mean, look, neither team can afford a loss in these first, your non-conference games with the schedules. Both of them have. Oklahoma really more so gets kind of that dagger SEC schedule this year, but Texas is not easy. There's no easy schedule in this league. So a loss for either team in non-conference would be a really bad thing. And yes, you're right. Those SEC fan bases would let the other fans know about it pretty much till next year. So
Absolutely. It'd be loud and clear, and it only would get louder and louder with every loss that we were to take throughout the season. But let's go talk about your side for just a minute. What are your personal expectations? What is a good year record wise for you Sooners? Because I've said several times you can play some really good football and still not hit that win total that a lot of Sooner fans are accustomed to reaching.
yeah, Cord, that's a great question. I think perspective of what a good season should probably change a little bit this year, especially people have to keep in mind with a 12-team playoff, yeah, you might drop one, you might drop two. That doesn't mean your season's over. That doesn't kill you like the past to where, yeah, you lose at home to K-State, you're like, I'm just throwing the rest of my tickets out the window, the season's done. That's not the case this year. And look, with these schedules, losses are going to happen. I mean, that's a gauntlet of teams. You don't go on the road to Auburn and Ole Miss and LSU and host Alabama, Tennessee, play Texas on a neutral site and not have some. Now, that being said, I mean, my expectation covering the team, being around them in practice, kind of seeing what Brent has brought in for 3 years. He had a big rebuild, man. I know that Lincoln Riley won some games in Norman, but the way he did it, he kind of abandoned toughness to do it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, there was yoga mats and stuff you just don't really see around football programs that they had to throw in the trash and bring some weights back into it. And it's not just the physical aspect; it's also the mental aspect of remembering. You guys have played some of the best defense in the history of college football. Remember that you can. And I think stacking 3 top 10 classes on each other since he's been here, some really big portal additions like Dominic Williams up from TCU, Deion Burks on the other side of the ball, going to play in the slot, also very dynamic. But on the defense specifically, that my expectations are very high for that unit. I think they could be one of the best in the SEC, if not the country. Of course, the breaks, you got to stay healthy. That's first and foremost. I'll say this year I have more faith in the depth, especially the front seven, where if somebody does go out, and the secondary to a large point. Last year, if you lost one of the starting cornerbacks, it was Katie bar the door. You're going to get beat deep. This year, they don't really miss a beat with what they brought in. So, top to bottom, that defense should be pretty stout. Cord, the offense, that's where the great unknown is. I like Jackson Arnold. He's got all the accolades in the world coming out of high school. Gatorade National Player of the Year. He looked really good in his one start, and he looked really bad in his one start. So it's kind of which Jackson shows up for this season. Does he have an offensive line that can gel before they really play some tough teams to protect him? Open running lanes. I think you're going to see Oklahoma really emphasize establishing the run this year and running when they want to. That's going to take a lot of pressure off Jackson Arnold. So if that front five offensive line can come together and gel, the same group of guys without having to platoon out because they're not liking what they're seeing, that's going to bode well, down the stretch. So I like the team. I like the defense, especially. I've got 9 wins in my mind, and I think if they reach that, that's a really good year. 10 is an unbelievable year, but I like them right there at that 9-win mark.
I agree with a lot about what you said. I think that you got to have a little bit of patience, especially with the offensive line and the young quarterback. I guess I don't know if Jackson's 19 or 20, one of the two, but those age quarterbacks, it doesn't take much. It just takes a little bit of game reps, a little bit of experience because of all the training and all the abilities that they've had because they've done these training probably since, they could wear diapers nowadays. I feel like that's the way it is with these quarterbacks, man. But I think there will have to be patience. I've said a couple times to Travis and JP, I think that it's pretty important for you guys to get off to a good start there. Obviously, you take care of your 3 games at home. It's really important that, you don't go out of the state until the very end of September, I believe. And so 4 games at home, if you can win those 4 games, because I think Tennessee's a pretty good matchup for you, it's going to give that offense a lot of confidence. And it's just the psyche, man. You got to keep it that your site. I'm not saying Brent has issues keeping his team high or anything, but you want the young offensive line, or not necessarily young, but you want that offensive line that's inexperienced. You want them to be able to come together, have that continuity, and just gel, earlier than maybe some of the outsiders expect them to. And so it's huge to get off, in my opinion, for the Sooners to get off to a big start. And the schedule, I mean, I think it shapes up. Obviously Tennessee and Auburn both have their own question marks. But back to your defense, man, I do agree. I think it has a chance for sure to be one of the best in the SEC, and if it's one of the best in the SEC, it has a good chance to be one of the best in the country.
Right.
And talking about Lincoln Riley and the toughness and everything that you referenced, I mean, I grew up as a child just, I mean, almost being afraid of Brent Venables and Bob Stoops defenses, man. I mean, I'm not even kidding. Like when we
I hear
play
you.
you
Yeah.
guys and I'm just watching and you got Venables almost halfway to the Cotton Bowl logo out in midfield, and he's psyching up the OU crowd, and you can tell how much energy and passion he poured into his defenses. And then y'all go out there and beat us, 63-14, 65-13, whatever it was. And even in the couple games that were close, it wasn't because we scored a lot of points. It was because our defense stepped up and stopped some pretty good Sooner offenses. And so, yeah, they got far, far, far from the defenses I watched growing up as a youngster. Almost unbelievable thinking about, y'all, the 2017, 2018, 2019 teams that just, I mean, you score 50 points in the Rose Bowl and you don't get out of there with a win.
Right.
You score 45 with Kyler Murray against Texas and we somehow get out of there in that one. Well, obviously, y'all won the rematch, the bigger game. Kudos. But yeah, man, just making your point on that, I thought it was crazy to the point of where Lincoln had got that program, especially on the defensive side. Obviously, he wasn't really struggling offensively. But y'all have had incredible offenses paired with incredible defenses before, man. You talk about going back into those Stoops teams, and you had the air raid, and you had Sumlin and Leach be a part of it at one point, and I mean, all those concepts that y'all just kind of continued up there through the mid 2000s. I mean, you threw the ball all over teams, and so not that I want you to have it both, but there's definitely a way that you can. It's
Right.
out there.
Yeah. I'm just going to jump back to a point you just made about Brent's teams keeping momentum throughout the year. Just to call it like it is. He has not done a good job of doing that at Oklahoma. The first year, it's 6-7. Again, there was, I think, a lot more to rebuild structure wise and psyche wise than people grasp. But that kind of got off the rails, snowballed down last year. They start off 6-7-0. They beat Texas, and the sky was the limit. And they had to sit and hear that and think about it for 2 weeks, and came back and almost lost at home to UCF the next game. They just weren't the same team the rest of the season, and that is definitely something to keep an eye on this year. Do they keep that elevated play? Can they sustain that elite level of play throughout the season? Because to be quite frank, they haven't, and there's been some sloppy plays, some turnovers, bad penalties at bad time. I don't know if there's a good time for a penalty, but just things to keep an eye on. It hasn't been all execution. There's also been some coaching stuff, that people have been critical on, and it's going to be interesting to watch if that tide turns to go along with the team playing well.
I mean, and like you talked about, a big part of it is that offensive line. If that offense helps out an already really good defense, I mean,
Right.
they become even better. But to play devil's advocate at the same time, if Jackson gets out there and turns the ball over a lot, or you have a lot of silly penalties, holding, false start, etc., or you just don't block people, then that defense obviously stays on the field more. Field position battles, you lose those, and inevitably you concede a few more points. And so it'll be fun to watch, man. Obviously, I have a big respect for Oklahoma program. There's 95% respect in there and a tiny touch of hatred because I've grown up watching you guys just dominate us. And I was even telling our mutual buddy Calvin, who I guess he technically kind of brought us together.
Yeah.
We were talking earlier in the DMs, and I was like, man, I've just seen so many more Sooner wins in my lifetime than losses in that game in that stadium, because we were talking about linking up or meeting up there. And yeah, man, it's time now. SEC new era. Sark and Venables are going to put out some great games, but I have gone on the record as saying that the longer I think Brent Venables is at Oklahoma, the better I think he does. I think that he will continue to recruit his type of player, particularly on the defensive line. He knows how to play in that conference. He competed against that conference a ton at Clemson. Obviously, he knows the scene. The longer he's there, I think the better he does. And so, the last year being the year that it was, obviously you drop a couple games you didn't want to drop and probably shouldn't have dropped, but at the same time, I mean, that's a big step up from 6-7. And I can't imagine what the talk would have been if you follow that up with a 7-6 year with a bowl win or something. I feel like the leash would have been a little bit shorter. Not that I don't know that y'all have to love the guy up there, right? He was so great for y'all for so many years.
Yeah, I mean the fan base absolutely adores Brent. That was kind of the people's choice. When Lincoln snuck out in the middle of the night and took Caleb with him, he that was the name you started hearing. The media we started hearing immediately, Brent Venables, and that came to fruition. I'm with you. I think that any player that plays for Coach Venables, he walks away a better man for it. And you always hope that wins follow that, because you and I know what's important, and that's what's on the scoreboard at the end of the game, not what I'm talking about. But I can tell you, to a man, there is not a better person in college football than Brent Venables. He cares about his kids and wants to see them succeed at other things in life and becoming better men. And again, I know that that doesn't sell stadiums, but you kind of hope for that sake, and OU fans, that the wins do come, and I think they will. I mean, he's assembled a lot of talent. He's getting closer to what he wants on defense, especially that defensive front seven. Guys that you just haven't really seen in Norman in a long time on that defensive front: size, speed, athleticism, and a couple of guys on the edge to keep an eye out for. PJ Adebore was a 5-star that came in last year as a true freshman. Head spinning a little bit. You know, you could tell he was a freshman. That happens, but this dude in practice, man, he's 6'4", 250, 255 pounds, very fast, very long, kind of a pass rush extraordinaire. So I'm curious to see what he does off the edge, because I think up the middle with Dominique Williams, a TCU transfer that they brought in to go along with guys like Jaden Jackson, David Stone, they're going to be pretty stout up the middle. Do they get better production on the outside? That is really, if I have a hindrance or a hesitation for this defense, that is it. Do they get better production rushing the passer from the outside? That's key to keep an eye on, in my opinion.
Absolutely, man. You got to be able to rush the passer in the game today. Now, as we just talked about how skilled quarterbacks are and receivers are, and coaches. I mean, they're becoming so excellent at scheming up teams. And you talk about the RPO game, and so yeah, I mean, it's absolutely important. You got to have D line play. Look at Texas; we've struggled to rush a passer for several years. Took a big jump last year. Expected to take another jump this year. And I mean, it just makes the defense so much easier when you're not having to send 5, 6, 7 bodies, after a quarterback to make him feel you. And so, I hate it that you guys are going to be as good as you're going to be on defense, man. It really is kind of back to that old Venables. You're going to be physical. Obviously last year, that was a team that had an attitude in that game between Jalil Farouk hanging out at midfield and having a nice warm introduction to all of our players. I think they handshaked and dapped up a little bit or something, and then went on their way. But yeah, I think I like that as a competitor and a guy that coached a little ball, played a lot of ball. I think that's awesome. The mental game and letting people know that you're there and that you're not going down without a big time fight. And so, and then obviously a lot of talk about Ethan Downs and him chirping at Quinn, and then just several plays. And that's the Red River. I mean, it's always like that. Even when we've had some of our Charlie Strong teams that were terrible, like, we still showed up with an attitude of that game at times. But I'm just saying it feels like that's becoming who Oklahoma was, back. They're getting back to being themselves. And so, yeah, man, I think Sark and Venables, I mean, obviously we adore Sark and expect big things out of him. We definitely think it's time to maybe take that next step, obviously. But I think we're as fans of the Red River Shootout. It will forever be the shootout for me. I think
Same.
we're in a very, very blessed and fortunate situation for this. Not that we're not the Iron Bowl. We don't have a blowout, 2 out of every 3 years in our rivalry. We're always fighting it out, but
Yeah.
we're in a good
No,
spot.
that rivalry, to me, I don't care what anybody says. I've been to a lot of different football games, a lot of rivalries. Oklahoma, Texas, and the Red River Shootout in Dallas, State Fair, second weekend of October, is the best game. I'm not going to say in college football. I'm going to say in sports. There is nothing I have ever been to that trumps. You have to experience that. Trying to put that in words for people that haven't been, you can't do it. You have to go and experience what that is like to be smack dab in the middle of a state fair with 100,000 people milling around that have no idea, could care less there's a game going on, in the center of it with usually 2 pretty good football teams nationally. That is a big deal, and the passion and the angst of the fan bases on both sides, that one is going to be on top of the world leaving that place, and one is going to want to jump off the top floor of the stadium when this thing's over.
Yeah.
There's nothing like it. And when you said the 95% respect, 5% hate, I get that. OU fans, I sense the real hatred is with Oklahoma State, and I would even say Missouri has crept up there right now. But Oklahoma and Texas fans listening might not want to hear this, but Oklahoma fans have always respected Texas quietly because they've gone and earned it on the field. They're not like Texas A&M or OSU. that chirp just to chirp without having really anything to lean on in their past. So I'm with you. I think it's more a game steeped in respect. You mentioned Calvin Kirkland. He's one of my best friends, and he's a Texas Longhorn. So
Yep.
that can't coexist if what I'm talking about isn't the case. So I completely agree. It's more respect than hate, though there is still a sliver of hate.
A
I'll
sliver,
give it
you
that.
know. I
A
mean,
sliver of
that's
hate.
That's what makes it what it is, man. And you talk about everything about that day is perfect. I'm very often telling people that is my personal Christmas, my absolute favorite day of the year. And I've lost, 70% of the games I've seen in my lifetime there. So I can't imagine if we ever get hot and win a few. But between the fairgrounds, getting up there almost before dark, and setting your day up, and then just walking through there, and just the nostalgia hits you immediately. And then you go in and you see the half orange, half red, and I mean, it's incredible because I try to hang out nowadays. I've gone in there early. I've watched the warm ups. I've done all that, so I'll get in there half hour early, and most people are already in their seats, and it's just beautiful, man. It's iconic. And to make your point, a lot of the people that sleep on that rivalry or call that rivalry overrated or have negative things to say about our rivalry are people that have never stepped within 60
Right.
mile radius of that venue during a game day. It
Right.
is fantastic. Now, I had a guy tell me the other day that they didn't like that rivalry because they had a terrible time the one time they went. I said, "When did you go?" He was an Oklahoma fan that went in 2022. And I get that.
Okay. Yeah.
I get it. Touche.
Get it. Yeah.
That's tough, but at the same time, I'm probably really managing my expectations going in there for that one. Just considering you didn't really have a quarterback playing that day. With all respect to Mr. Dallas Bevins, not trying to throw shade his way, but y'all did run a lot of tight end wildcats. So
Yeah.
So okay, let's go. We're gonna say one last goodbye here. We got just a few days before both teams kick off. So one last goodbye to the Big 12, Mr. Dave. Um, I got two questions for you here. I want your all-time favorite Big 12 memory, and I was afraid these two would correlate with one another. So obviously that can be Oklahoma related. But then I want your all-time favorite Big 12 Oklahoma team that was not the 2000 national champion Sooners.
Wow, Cord, great questions. I have to dig back in the memory bank here. I'll answer first, the last question first. I'll go with
Sure.
the 2001 Oklahoma team, the very next year that did not win it. Jason White comes in against Texas as a backup quarterback that wins the game. That was the Roy Williams Superman leap when he hit Chris Sims in the end zone. That
Yep.
was probably one of the best college defenses I've ever seen. You ended up having two Thorpe, one Nagurski, and two Butkus winners all in the same starting 11, and an Outland Trophy up there. I think with Tommy Harris was a true freshman. So an
God, he was a nightmare.
awesome defense, man, and he just complimented those 2,000 guys that came back. Jason would eventually blow that knee out later in the season at Lincoln, Nebraska, playing the Cornhuskers, and that kind of derailed that one. But favorite Big 12 memory, man. I mean, you've got. Why don't you go ahead and give me yours first, and I'll think of mine while you're talking.
Okay, well, if I'm going outside of the national championships, that's an obvious one, and the Rose Bowl was really really cool, man. But 2008 for me was really special when we got you guys. I was a young guy back then. My grandma was, and I know she's watching, and grandmothers are the best. But she told me, if I reached a certain, if I made all A's, she would give me season tickets to Texas, like the coolest grandma in the world. And so, and on top of that, she took me to the 2008 OU game, and just like I told you, what I tell you earlier, sometimes I think you can tell. Sometimes I'm a glass half empty guy. Like I was scared of Oklahoma football in the 2000s. You beat us 5 times in a row. It feels like we scored maybe 60 combined points in those games. Maybe it was tough. And so the 2008 game, I really admired your team. Obviously, Sam Bradford, Jermaine Gresham. You had an insane defense as well. I know that you lost Ryan Lewis in that Texas game, which is probably pretty big in that outcome. But that was just a really special day for me overall. Being there, hanging out with my grandma, one of my favorite people in the world. But then to know that I know we beat you in 06, you got us in 07, but the 2008 game was a lot different because both of those teams were special.
Yeah.
And so the way that we won it, kind of battling back, that Oklahoma offense felt like they're going to score every time they touched the football. And so to kind of slow them down in the second half a little bit and win that 45-35 game, That probably gets my nod if we're talking about just Big 12 games.
That's an awesome one, man. That also had the Jordan Shipley kickoff return, did it not?
Yeah, man, absolutely. Did you know him and Colt McCoy were roommates?
Yeah, I think I heard that back in
Yeah.
the day.
I saw
Yeah,
I saw a tweet about it the other day, and I was like, man, that I have to ask somebody that knows because that's a pretty cool tidbit there. But
that's
yeah, man.
awesome.
So
Those are
you,
two guys steeped in Texas Longhorn football history. If they were roomies, dude, they were having a good time in Austin.
Christ.
I'm gonna have to go. I think, dude, I'm gonna go with before I was media and covering anything, just as a fan basis, Oklahoma, Nebraska. I think it was the last game Nebraska played in the league, the Big 12 championship down in Arlington. Nebraska got up 17-0. Oklahoma comes back to win. Linebacker for Oklahoma that played really well that game, Austin Box, would end up passing away in the offseason. And that kind of became a rallying cry for guys the next season. But whatever year that was, I want to say it was 12, Nebraska's last game. That one to me stands out just because it was the last time you saw a couple legends on the field in the same league, and it was sad and a great game and a lot of emotional swings on both sides. Oklahoma eventually comes back to win the Big 12 championship when it didn't look likely, but that's the one I'll go with for me.
I like it, man. That's great. That's a rivalry that I wish was played, a lot more often. I understand the current landscape, but that I love that rivalry. So kind of like Nebraska football. I wish they always played. I know they play Colorado this year again, but I wish they always played Colorado. And I know it's hard with your schedule's hard enough as it is. And Nebraska's not in the spot they used to be, but that's still be a pretty tough game for the Sooners to add with that SEC slate on top of it. Um, well, I can't think of a Big 12 guy that. Trying to think my favorite Sooner outside of Jermaine Gresham. Man, I loved that guy for a long time, but I was pretty sad when we lost to Tommy Harris recruitment. I was probably about 13 years old when he committed to
Okay.
Oklahoma, and I remember being mad about it. But I'll say Jermaine Gresham was a guy for Oklahoma that I really appreciated as a tight end. I just thought he was, kind of unguardable. He blocked really well. I know he had some injury issues, and then when he got to the league, I mean, he was still a player, still easy to root for. But is there a Texas player back in history that you kind of found yourself to like a little bit or rooted for, maybe when they got out of the burn orange?
I rooted for him when he was in it because I thought he had grit and toughness, and I thought it was kind of BS what happened to him eventually. But Major Applewhite playing quarterback for Texas,
Yep.
and of course Chris Sims comes in, the highly touted guy. His pops, is his pops, and I think Mac was under a lot of scrutiny to get him on the field by boosters and fans alike, and Major Applewhite to me was one of the better quarterbacks in all of college football, and I thought that was kind of a bad deal the way that went down. But always respected Major. I know a lot of OU fans hate the guy, but there was just something gamey about the kid, man. You couldn't write him off. It didn't seem like you could hit him enough. I mean, I watched an OU defense just pound on him. I think 1999, sack him
99.
like
Yep.
8 or 9 times. It didn't matter, man. This guy just kept stepping up in the teeth of a blitz and delivering perfect passes. So I have to respect that. I'm going to go with Major Applewhite. Always dug Colt McCoy. I thought he about the same deal, dude. Just a gamey kid, a tough kid. Not the biggest of arm, not the best measurements, but damn sure won football games. So those are the two I'll go with.
Awesome, man. I love to hear that. It's Major's a name that I mean, obviously that we were a lot younger during that time, and it was hard to watch because he would do great things on the field, and at the same time, Chris Sims, I mean, he had a great career at Texas, except for the second Saturday in October, every time. And watching that and just knowing the passion and the heart that Major played with, it definitely felt slighted for the guy. I think he more than deserved his chance. And then I think every Texas fan in the world would probably back you up right now, Brother Dave. If you talk about the 2001 season, very chaotic into the season with you guys losing Bedlam at home to Oklahoma
Ugh,
State,
yeah.
Colorado scoring 62 on Nebraska. Guys, that was an insane game. I don't know if you watched that one, but Colorado had guys running in holes that were so big. There was two different occasions where a guy gets 30 yards down the field and he stops and turns back because he
Thought
think
it
he
was
thinks it's
blown
a
dead.
blown dead, a flag of some sort. And
Bobby Purify and Chris Brown.
Bobby Purify and Chris Brown, they were just running counter G over and
Yep.
over and over and over, and then it worked on Texas, but not until Chris Sims had, I believe, 4 turnovers in the first half of that football game and really let the Buffs back into it. So In comes Major Applewhite, almost saves today. Actually, Major would have won that game for Texas. Colorado's punting from their own end very late in the game. We're down by 6. I don't know if you remember this, and we commit a running into the kicker penalty to give them the first down. They kick a field goal. We end up scoring anyways, lose 39-37. But Major he was fun to watch as a kid, man, because I'm 5'11" and 3/4 and about 165 pounds. So like I had someone to look up to. I was like, he's OP just like me. And so to watch Major play with that passion and heart, you're like, okay, that's the guy I want to be like. And so I was still pretty young and didn't know all the details about everything that was going on. But you get a little older and make a few more connections, and you definitely feel even worse for the guy. So big respect for that pick, man. I like that a lot. Now let me ask you this: if you have any concerns about Texas heading into 2024 on the football field, what would they be?
Oh, I mean, running back that took a hit this fall. I hated to hear that for C.J. Baxter, man. That's 2 years in a row, preseason. I think that's kind of he's dinged up and now out for the year.
Yep.
That sucks. Hate to hear that for anybody. Probably establishing a run game now. That would be my chief concern. Now, I think Quinn Ewers is good enough to win on his own. I really do, and an offensive line that's very talented and a lot of experience up there on that group. So that's good. And I know that Texas always has athletes. So I think they'll find someone to tote the rock, a line good enough to open up holes. So that'll probably work its way out. I just kind of like Oklahoma. Everybody's like, yeah, they brought in Deion Burks and they got Nick Anderson back and blah blah blah. Well, Drake Stoops was a big engine motor guy last year that made that offense go. Until I see Jackson Arnold find Drake Stoops this year, I don't know who it's going to be, and that's an unanswered question. Until I see Quinn Ewers replace Xavier Worthy and Jordan Whittington and Saunders and somebody take Brooks' spot, I don't know. So I won't really say a concern as much as just I need to see it, but establishing your one in a game is a lot different than trying to do it in practice. There's only one way to do it, and it sometimes takes a while into the season before that guy emerges. So I know that Isaiah Bond came over from Alabama, and everyone expects that's going to be it. Same way with Oklahoma and Deion Burks. But again, until we see that on the field come to fruition, that these guys have to get chemistry together and timing together, and it takes a while. So that would be my one concern. Who's going to be the one? How long does it take to find him, and how well can Texas run the ball until that happens?
I'm right there. I share very similar concerns regarding this team. The running game I know will be there. I like Jaden Blue's a terrific back and would have got obviously a ton of run. Where my issue is I've mentioned it a lot on this channel. So for you guys listening, I'm sorry for repeating myself again and again and again. But I need to know what it's going to look like on 3rd and 2, 4th and 1, 4th and 2. Those money downs. Are we able to pick up the hard yards the way that we were with Jonathan Brooks and Bijan Robinson and Roshan Johnson? Where we just sometimes the scheme blew up and we're hit 2 yards in the backfield, and it didn't matter because those guys were so superiorly skilled to a lot of the Big 12 defenses that were attacking them. And so that's where my concerns are, because we're up against a little bit better caliber of athlete, obviously, in the SEC, and those downs are very, very, very big. And so we'll see what that looks like. And then as far as who's the guy, I don't know. I know that there's a lot of reports about a lot of different guys that are pretty sterling, and people are highly optimistic about this guy for 4 or 5 days, and another guy steps up. But same thing that you just said, man, it's practice reps. And so game time is going to be a big difference. You have that big Michigan game in week 2. And so, we don't have Xavier Worthy, Jatavian Sanders, Adonai Mitchell, Jonathan Brooks, Jordan Whitting. That's a massive amount of production that we're having to replace. And to make your point even further, it doesn't happen overnight, and it's going to take some game reps and game experience. And so, yeah, I like Quinn, but that's kind of why I like Colorado State plus 32.5, because we got a little bit to figure out, So,
I mean, look, I think Temple is a 41, 42-point dog to Oklahoma. That's why I like Temple, because
yeah.
it's game one, man, and game one stuff happens. So I'm with you there. I think it's going to be, and look, both might come out and look like machines and make us look stupid, but I think you're going to see both finding their way in this game one, and it's going to take longer, I think, to get in rhythm than people think. So I like both the underdogs in this, but I have to say it wouldn't surprise me if Texas covers. It would surprise me more if Oklahoma did. I like Texas to cover more than Oklahoma in this spot. That's how much I like Quinn and I like your offensive line.
That's a great point. I mean, the offensive line, I expect them to have a great year. Big jump from 2022 to 2023, especially late in the year in 2022. They really stepped up and played some good football. But yeah, I mean, the offensive line protects Quinn. Obviously, that gives him a lot more time to find his guy and to figure out his scene. I think one thing I didn't mention though is that in the run game, Quinn might have to do even a little bit more than he did last year. But at the same time, you want to keep three as healthy and as clean of a bill as you can. So it's like I don't know how much designed runs you would have for the guy. It's not like we're not pretending like he's the craziest scrambler or anything out here, but he was serviceable last year with his legs and
Right.
picked up some big first downs and even a couple touchdowns when we needed them. So, well, we talked a little bit off air about obviously the Temple game and that spread. Does the Houston or Tulane matchups worry you at all? I know that those aren't programs as far they're going to have the type of athlete that Oklahoma does, but I mean there's still a Big 12 program, and then Tulane's won a major bowl game in the last 2 seasons. So did that keep you up at all?
OU fans, I don't think so because they're just so laser focused on the SEC, and that is where the problem may lie. If the team is as well, that's all they've heard this entire offseason is the SEC, SEC. Well, you're right. You've got Temple, Houston, Tulane coming to town. Tulane should have beat Oklahoma, I think, in 2019 with Lincoln Riley there. But they had a quarterback that played in college 20 years, Michael Pratt. He's finally
Yeah.
gone. And that was a big part of their attack. Of course, they kind of run that or ran that option out of the shotgun. Well, that translates to Willie Fritz, their head coach, who's now at Houston, oddly enough. So to answer your question, I don't think Tulane is going to be what they were with Willie Fritz. I think Houston is the bigger danger. That there's always athletes in the Houston area, so what schemes can Willie Fritz come up with, right? What gimmicks can he come up with to give this defense some issues? That to me is the one I'm kind of watching. Plus, it's before they host Tennessee, which I think should be undefeated by then, and that's going to be a gigantic matchup in Norman when they roll in Game 4. So, are they looking ahead a little bit to the Volunteers? Does Willie Fritz have something in his bag of tricks? Did he find what he needed in the transfer portal to run that style of offense that's a little weird, a little hinky. You don't see it all the time. It's hard to practice for. I could see
Right.
that one giving Oklahoma more issues than a Tulane team that just lost their head coach. But I think they do have a returning running back that was close to a second or third team All American last year. So Tulane still has athletes on top of the best uniform game in college football. I mean, those colors together are just outstanding. Gonna love seeing that in a couple weeks. But I think Houston poses the bigger threat to get I won't say a dub, but push Oklahoma further in Norman.
Man, I knew we were destined to be good friends. You referenced the Tulane uniforms and helmets. So I did a show with a group a Georgia Bulldog group, and we did a little segment where we had our top three helmets in college football. And so I wasn't ready for it. I was kind of like put on the spot, and I panicked and chose three that I probably wouldn't have chose. Well, no, I did choose like the red North Carolina State helmets with the big wolf
Nice.
on it.
Yeah.
I did choose that one, but the other one, I mean, I did like standard, I think like Michigan and Florida State. But I definitely was kicking myself because I really like Ole Miss's powder blues, and I love Tulane's. The powder blue for me, man, it's just something about it. I'm a big fan.
Good
But yeah,
call.
Tulane's are up there for me. So yeah, I was just curious. Had to ask. I know that those games being right before that SEC slate. I mean, we struggled with Houston a little bit last year. I think that game took a few years off my life. An absolute crazy game that I don't want to talk about how it ended because there's going to be a lot of people that have differing opinions on that.
Yeah.
Shout out Tim Brando if you're out there. Don't care what you say on Twitter, you goober. But yeah, man, the season's here. Do me one more favor before we let you out of here.
Yeah. What's up, brother?
If you have a prediction for the Red River, go ahead and drop it. It's okay if not,
Oh.
because I'm gonna have you back on before, so we can pause and come back to this. Okay,
Prediction for Red River.
we can pause and come back to this. I gotta have
So
something to turn into a little short and post on Twitter so people come and watch this video.
Okay, so I'm doing Ghost of Texas Football, Ghost and Friends. Dave Myrick here with 107.7 The Franchise, flagship of OU Athletics, and I'm going to give a prediction on the Red River Shootout, which again I'll always call it that. I'm going to say that look, man, I've been around this program, Oklahoma, up close and personal for 2 years. I know what Brent Venables has brought in on the defensive side. I know that defense wins big games, and I'm going to take Oklahoma to beat Texas in the Cotton Bowl. This year. I'm going to pick somewhere around 37-34 final.
A true shootout, my man. A true one.
Yeah, both offenses good enough to score, but man, in those type of games, you need a defense to get that one more stop, and that's something Lincoln Riley could never get. I think Brent's got it this year.
I mean, talk about last year's game, and I love it. You went full bore there. That was beautiful. Thank you so much. Um, talk about last year's game a little bit, and I know I'll let you get out, but just to make
Oh,
your
you good,
point,
man? Yeah.
y'all got the stops, man. You got the goal line stand. You got Quinn's fumble, I think, late in the third quarter where he fumbled just past midfield. You know, you got this interception in the end zone on the RPO where JT got blew up by Billy Bowman, and that happened right in front of me. I felt like he almost hit me too, but yeah, man, that's making your point. Y'all got the stops, and that's something that Lincoln's team, once it's late in the game, the second half, the defense is gassed. Obviously, y'all been working on yoga and Pilates all week, so you didn't have the strength there, anyways, and so you're kind of getting pushed around, So I'll give you credit. I don't have an issue with your prediction. I sure hope you're wrong. But yeah, Dave, thank you for doing this, sir. This has been a blast, guys. If you're watching on Twitter, get your booties over to my bio. Hit that link. It'll take you right to the Ghost and Friends channel where you will subscribe and like this video, please. It's free to do both. We got a lot of fun stuff coming on. Got Eric Nolling at Inside Texas joining me in the morning, talk a little bit of recruiting. Tomorrow night, we've got a Notre Dame at Texas A&M preview with a couple of Aggies. And so, but Brother Dave, thanks so much. Would love to have you back anytime. Best of luck to you guys up there at the franchise. And semi-good luck to your Sooners on the football field, brother.
Cord, anytime you want, brother. In fact, we're going to have to do something in person, Red River Shootout weekend in October. We'll hook up in like a hotel lobby and get a show going.
I'd love to, brother, man. Well, thank you again for your time. I'll see you on Twitter real soon, okay?
Sounds good, brother.